Check, check. Okay, yeah, the mic is definitely hot. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome back to Sip&Talk. I'm your host, Sunny. And today is just, well, it is full of energy. A huge welcome to all our Sip&Talkers tuning in today.
It is great to be back, and I can already tell you are incredibly fired up today.
Oh, you have no idea. Okay, I just need to vent for like 10 seconds before we get into the actual data today. Just taking a giant sip of my iced Americano here to calm down. So I almost organized a full-blown recall motion to impeach our HOA president last night.
Wait, seriously? You went to that community meeting for one singular reason. You went to fight for the right to place a single regulation-sized pink plastic flamingo in your front yard.
Yeah.
How did we jump straight to impeachment proceedings?
Because the escalation was completely unhinged. I explained to the committee, very calmly, by the way, that it's just a classic piece of Americana, and you know what the HOA committee claimed.
I'm terrified to ask.
They looked me dead in the eye and said this plastic bird would crash local property values, attract wild raccoons, and get this, require a community-wide written ballot with legal counsel present to approve.
Oh my gosh.
I just want a plastic bird in the mulch. Are we convening the UN Security Council here?
Anyway, you realize you're just taking your personal yard decorating failure and like forcibly elevating it into this grand critique of the administrative system.
Yeah, no, I am absolutely pushing back on that. This is astute American democratic observation right here. I mean, you know how it feels when you can't even get a straight answer out of your local HOA.
Yes, frustrating.
So imagine that frustration, but applied to our national security and global infrastructure. If you look around the world right now, global democratic and administrative operations feel extremely agitated. People are highly polarized over everything from, buying a cup of coffee to HOA meetings to voting in national elections. The temperature is just boiling.
I will actually concede your point there. The temperature is definitely boiling. If we look at the bigger picture, several major global democracies are facing intense administrative dysfunction right now. The trust crises are very, very real.
They really are, and we're seeing it in our own inbox, honestly. The Sip&Talk mail servers were almost crashing this week, especially from our Taiwanese listeners, which is why today we are pulling from a massive stack of geopolitical intelligence reports, civil defense assessments out of Taipei, and global election data. We really want to figure out why the world feels so incredibly fragile right now.
It's a critical discussion.
Yeah, we're going to examine the sheer panic around global voting mechanics and then really dig into how a society like Taiwan stress tests its own survival.
Which is fascinating, especially because our Taiwanese listeners have a completely unique perspective on this. They basically treat democracy like a 24/7 high-intensity extreme sport. I mean, they are hyper-engaged because they literally have to be.
Totally. So let's actually start with that server crash analogy because it perfectly mirrors the data we have on the recent South Korean local elections. This wasn't just, a minor administrative hiccup where a machine jammed.
No, it was way worse.
They literally ran out of ballots.
Yeah, it was a cascading systemic failure.
Yeah.
And the mechanism of how it failed is what's truly fascinating when you dig into the reports. So during those June local elections, South Korea's Central Election Management Committee fundamentally misjudged the voter turnout.
How do you even do that?
Well, they looked at historical data for early voting, applied a completely outdated demographic model, and just assumed a really low turnout. So based on that flawed assumption, they only printed ballots for about 50% of the registered voters in certain key districts.
Which is mind-boggling. You don't just print half the ballots for an election. The budget was obviously there to print 110% to cover any contingencies, but they decided to optimize the paper supply. And the result was entirely predictable.
Completely predictable.
By the afternoon, in more than 14 polling stations across major Seoul districts like Gangnam and Songpa, the paper literally vanished. Voters were showing up to do their civic duty and being told, sorry, we're out of paper, maybe come back later.
And that administrative black box failing led to a massive physical standoff.
Yes. There was a 35-hour blockade of ballot boxes in Jamsil by furious voters. They literally used their bodies to form a chain, stopping the boxes from being moved because they felt the entire chain of custody was compromised by the shortage.
Which is a valid fear.
Right. It got so heated that riot police had to intervene on June 5th just to break the human chain.
And the fallout was huge. The top election officials eventually resigned in disgrace over this, but the government refused to hold a revote, claiming it didn't meet the legal threshold to invalidate the entire district.
Wow.
But here is the most crucial data point from these events. The demographic of the protesters, the youth voters out in the streets, the Gen Z and millennials, were very clear that this wasn't a partisan fight.
They didn't care who won.
Exactly. They didn't care which candidate benefited. They were furious over a basic foundational administrative failure. It's the sheer incompetence that broke their trust.
And that fragility of trust, I mean, it is everywhere. Look at our own anxieties right here in the U.S. The anxiety over election administration has gotten so severe that the U.S. Secret Service had to upgrade our election certification process to a National Special Security Event, an NSSE.
Which is a massive deal.
Yeah, that's the same security designation we use for the Super Bowl or a presidential inauguration.
And objectively speaking, you see that anxiety manifesting strongly on both sides of our political aisle.
Oh, absolutely.
You have right-wing scrutiny heavily focused on the mechanics of mail-in ballots, demanding strict voter ID enforcement and questioning the chain of custody. And then on the flip side, you have left-wing No Kings protests pushing back fiercely against voter roll purges, arguing that the administrative state is stripping eligible citizens of their rights.
Both sides basically just fundamentally fear that the administrative machinery is broken or rigged. And it's not just us. Japan just went through an identical collapse of institutional faith. The ruling Liberal Democratic Party, the LDP, got caught in the Eurogame, the slush fund scandal. And the mechanics of this are wild.
They really are. The LDP had a nearly uninterrupted 26-year coalition dominance. But the reports show they had this quota system for fundraising dinners.
Okay.
If a politician sold tickets beyond their assigned quota, the excess cash was literally kicked back to them off the books.
Wait, literally off the books?
Entirely. We're talking millions of yen hidden in desk drawers, completely bypassing campaign finance laws.
And when the public found out, it sparked this rare, massive, nationwide rage. The Japanese public, much like the Korean youth, simply said, you know, we are done with the black box. And it completely fractured that two-decade political dominance at the polls.
And we're tracking the exact same data in Europe. In Serbia, the corruption kills protests erupted after a newly renovated train station canopy collapsed, tragically killing 15 people.
That was awful.
It was. And the public discovered the construction contracts were entirely opaque, just sealed off from public scrutiny. And then in Hungary and Slovakia, hundreds of thousands are protesting the centralization of power. So the common thread globally is this zero-tolerance policy for administrative black boxes. Citizens are increasingly organizing in these decentralized, youth-led movements. Trust in institutions isn't just declining, it is hanging by a thread.
So, okay, if global citizens are this incredibly anxious just about the mechanics of voting and local infrastructure, how do you even begin to practice for an existential geopolitical threat? I mean, if we are worried about paper ballots, how does a modern society prepare for a total blockade?
That is the perfect question to bridge into the assessments we have out of Taiwan.
Let's do it.
So for decades, Taiwan has held traditional air raid drills, known as the Wanan exercises. Historically, these were fairly routine. The sirens go off, you stay inside for 30 minutes, the streets clear out, and then life goes back to normal. But recently, these have evolved into intense, highly realistic, urban resilience exercises.
And the international attention on these recent drills was totally unprecedented. I mean, you had global news networks flooding the streets, but more importantly, you had international diplomats on the ground observing everything, including representatives from the AIT, the American Institute in Taiwan.
Right, and from our U.S. perspective, we really have to frame this around our ongoing U.S.-China tech war and our broader Taiwan policies. The reason Washington, and really the whole world, is watching these drills so closely is because of the Davidson window.
The 2027 threat timeline.
Correct. It's named after the former U.S. Indo-Pacific commander, who warned that Beijing could have the military capability to invade by 2027.
It's right around the corner.
It is. So our allies are looking at Taiwan's civil defense to measure one critical metric. Does the society have the collective willpower to resist a blockade? The prevailing anxiety in our global security circles is, yesterday's Ukraine, tomorrow's Taiwan. The world is trying to see if Taiwan is psychologically and physically prepared for the unthinkable.
And part of that preparation involved a very controversial new drill, mobile network throttling.
Oh yeah, this was a big deal.
During the exercise, they intentionally degraded or restricted mobile data networks to simulate wartime communication breakdowns.
Which is, honestly, the most realistic thing they could do.
Right.
In any modern conflict, electronic warfare and severing communications are step one. You blind the enemy before you strike.
But the domestic pushback was loud. The main opposition party, the KMT, complained aggressively. They called it fake exercises, real martial law. And they cited the massive disruptions to civilian life because if you throttle the network, people can't use their e-payments to buy lunch.
Right.
Parking garage boom gates wouldn't open because the license plate scanners rely on cloud servers.
It's the friction of modern convenience colliding with survival preparation.
Exactly. But, my analogy for this is, if your house is in a hurricane zone, you don't complain that boarding up the windows ruins your ocean view.
Good point.
Built it to survive. You don't complain about the hammer being too loud when the storm is offshore.
And the data shows the mainstream Taiwanese public largely agreed with you. They rejected the KMT's complaints. They understand that if missiles fly, the cell towers and undersea cables are the very first targets.
Obviously.
So the public essentially viewed complaining about a temporary network slowdown during a vital defense drill as a dangerous form of surrenderism. They are accepting the friction of preparation because they understand the catastrophic cost of being unprepared.
But, okay, what good is testing the physical cell towers and the infrastructure if the people with the blueprints to those towers are compromised? While they are physically practicing to defend their streets, there is a massive political fight happening right now over their internal legal defenses.
The internal security clash. This is where the legal framework meets national survival. There is a legislative controversy brewing over a proposal by KMT legislators to actually lower the penalties for leaking national security and military secrets.
Which sounds completely counterintuitive when you are facing an existential threat. And to understand why this is so explosive, we have to look at the context here. Taiwan has recently seen a string of high-profile espionage cases involving active and retired military officers passing critical intelligence to foreign adversaries.
That's a huge vulnerability.
And the public is already furious because past sentences for these crimes have been incredibly light. We're talking about people committing literal espionage and getting away with probation, or paying a fine that amounts to a few $1,000s.
The deterrence is functionally broken at that point.
Seriously.
The KMT's argument for this new proposal is that the current national security laws are too broadly defined. They claim the vague wording risks criminalizing innocent civil servants who might accidentally mishandle a classified document, so they are framing it as a human rights and legal proportionality issue.
But the public's counter-argument is fierce and, frankly, very logical. They are saying, look, we are under constant threat of a blockade or invasion. Lowering penalties right now looks like you are intentionally building a safe harbor for leakers.
That's a strong accusation.
And here is the real kicker, the massive conflict of interest. The legislators pushing this are the exact same people who have access to highly classified defense budgets and secret military briefings.
It's a structural vulnerability. If the people who have access to the nation's deepest secrets are the same people writing the laws to lower the punishment for leaking those secrets, you have a major problem.
The public sees this as lawmakers acting as both referee and player. They are essentially rigging the rules to protect themselves, and the optics of that are just toxic.
It really highlights why deterrence matters so much. When the legal punishment for espionage is lower than the financial reward offered by an adversary, your national security apparatus is guaranteed to leak from the inside out.
And all of these internal divisions, the arguments over the network, throttling drills, the fights over national security laws, how do these get amplified? Because they don't happen in a vacuum. This brings us to the immense psychological pressure Taiwanese citizens face daily.
Right. They face it through what security analysts officially term cognitive warfare. And the mechanics of how this warfare operates are insidious. It's not just dropping leaflets anymore. It's manipulating the very algorithms people use to perceive reality.
Let's use the neighbor Old Wang analogy from the reports to explain this, because I love this visual. Imagine you have a neighbor, Old Wang, who stands outside your house every single night with a massive megaphone.
Okay.
And he's blasting, "Hey, Americans, China is so advanced, their high-speed rail crushes Amtrak. Your infrastructure is crumbling. Why do you waste so much time and money on these messy elections? Just listen to Beijing and be happy."
That megaphone represents the constant algorithmic barrage of state-sponsored narratives aimed at Taiwan's digital feeds. And what's fascinating is how Taiwanese civil society actively deconstructs this. They break this down into what we can call the three-body combo of cognitive warfare. Let's pull apart these three specific narratives and look at the mechanism behind them.
Okay, narrative one is the one I see all the time on our own social media feeds. It's the obsession with hard infrastructure. China is so advanced. They point to the gleaming skyscrapers, the massive high-speed rail networks. And their total dominance in the EV market.
The hard infrastructure argument is incredibly effective because the visual evidence is real. The trains are fast.
They really are.
But the debunk to this, which Taiwanese civil society constantly highlights, is that this hardware comes with severe, non-negotiable systemic costs. Mainly, a total digital surveillance state and zero privacy. You might be able to buy a coffee with your face using biometric payment, but your face is tracked everywhere you go, tied to a social credit system. Advanced infrastructure does not equal a progressive society if the underlying mechanism lacks basic human rights.
Yeah, a shiny high-speed train is cool, but not if you aren't allowed to complain when that same train takes you to a re-education camp. Which leads right into narrative two. China isn't bad, or it's completely safe as long as you mind your own business.
The mechanical flaw in that narrative is that authoritarian systems are only safe until you inevitably cross the system.
Right.
There is no independent judiciary to appeal to. There is no legal defense for your property rights, your labor rights, or your bodily autonomy if the state decides they want your land or your business. The safety is entirely conditional on total absolute compliance.
My analogy for this one is the toxic workplace.
Let's hear it.
That's like saying your boss is great, the pay is good, the snacks in the break room are fully stocked, except he occasionally locks you in the office overnight without your phone, and HR fires you immediately if you try to complain about it to anyone. Sure, it feels safe if you keep your head down and eat the free snacks, but you have zero actual rights.
That captures the dynamic perfectly. And finally, narrative 3 targets the messy nature of free societies. It's the idea that recall elections and democracy are a waste of money and cause too much chaos.
Oh, this one makes my blood boil.
The cognitive defense against this is to view democracy fundamentally as an insurance policy. Yes, running elections, holding public debates, allowing protests. It all has a measurable operating cost in time and taxpayer money.
It looks chaotic.
It definitely does.
But totalitarianism's hidden costs are far, far higher. You have endemic corruption at the highest levels that goes completely unchecked,
Yep.
catastrophic policy mistakes with zero mechanism for course correction, and violent power succession crises. As the old saying goes, if you think democracy is expensive, you haven't tasted the cost of dictatorship. Paying for paper ballots is significantly cheaper than paying for a collapsed society.
And what's truly remarkable is the Taiwanese response to this constant algorithmic megaphone. They don't spend their energy screaming back at online trolls every day.
No, they use weaponized humor. Their standard response to the propaganda is just brilliant because it exposes the logical flaw in the megaphone. They just reply online and say, look, if your system is so great and so perfect, why do you have to spend billions of dollars on cognitive warfare to convince us?
Exactly.
Just let your citizens visit us freely, let us visit you freely, and the free market of ideas will decide. It instantly deflates the entire propaganda balloon.
It's a highly sophisticated civic defense mechanism. By recognizing the tactics and the algorithms being used, they neutralize the emotional manipulation completely.
We've covered a massive amount of ground today. We went from the absurdity of HOA disputes to ballot boxes in Seoul to existential geopolitics and the defense of democratic infrastructure.
I want to leave you, our Sip&Talkers, with a final provocative thought to mull over. We've spent this time analyzing how Taiwan deals with external cognitive warfare and algorithmic manipulation. But when we look at our own domestic political outrage here in the U.S., the intense polarization, the viral anger on our feeds over everything from elections to culture wars, how much of our anger is organically ours?
Oh, that's a good question.
And how much is being subtly amplified by that exact same geopolitical megaphone? Are we just dancing to the algorithm of neighbor old Wang without even realizing it?
Man, that is a chilling thought. It really makes you look at your timeline and your own outrage differently.
It really does.
Well, before we wrap up, I want to clearly state our standard disclaimers. Today's episode is an objective analysis of global events based on the reports and data we've gathered. Sip&Talk does not criticize or discriminate against any nation, group, or people. Our goal is, and always will be, to encourage independent, critical thinking.
And as always, any mention of the economy, markets, or infrastructure is for data context only and is not financial advice.
Thank you all for hanging out with us today. Don't forget to subscribe to Sip&Talk wherever you get your audio. And a huge shout out to our good friend, Mickey. You have to check out his YouTube channel, Mickey to Life, to see his absolute latest travel vlogs. He's doing some amazing stuff around the world right now. Stay curious, keep questioning those administrative black boxes, and we will see you next time.